Hello, my name is John Berner, and for the last 2 months I have been working as an editorial intern for the Faulkner Literary Society as my CPS second tier internship credit. Um, what are the successes and challenges of my internship experience? Well, let me start with the challenges. Uh, Working at the Faulkner Society is very different than my experience as a student in particular as regards to the kind of projects they give me, the kind of time frame they give me to complete them, and the lack of deadlines I have to complete these projects. For instance, they'll give me something much, much larger than what I'm used to in school. Uh, at school, for most of my classes, it's like 5-page essay. You have a week to complete it. Go. And I know the time frame for that. I know what I need to do and when. For the Faulkner Society, they will, for instance, give me 100 short stories written by high schoolers and say I have to read these 100 short stories and grade each one of them on a 1 to 10 scale whenever I can get around to it. So budgeting that time is much harder and a much different experience than what I've ever been exposed to before. And most of the work that I've had with the Faulkner Society has been along those same lines. Maybe nothing that extreme, but similar concepts. And my successes with this internship have been adapting myself to meet those same challenges that I just spoke of. Learning to budget my time on a much longer term and a much longer project, and being able to motivate myself despite what I have going on outside of the internship in my life, and being able to complete all of those challenges in the designated time frame. My internship contribution project. Every year, the Faulkner Society hosts a writing competition, the William Faulkner Wit and Wisdom writing competition, which is open to writers in the English language of all ages, writing in all categories, all genres, everything from creative nonfiction to poetry to fiction. So for my internship contribution, I have been researching, have interviewed, and will be currently writing an article on one of the judges of this writing competition, a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist turned biographer named Daniel DeVise. Now, for my internship contribution, I have had to research his work. I've read everything I can find by him, every piece of journalism he has that's archived online, and I've read his most recent book, dual biography of Andy Griffith and Don Knotts, aptly called Andy and Don. 2 weeks ago, I interviewed him. I drove down to Maryland to where he's from to discuss the book Andy and Don with him, to talk about his writing process, to talk about his next project, a book on the 1989 Tour de France, and to discuss his tips for future writers of nonfiction and people considering journalism. Now, I wouldn't classify it as ethical, effective community engagement in the strictest sense of the word, the definition we've been using in this class, in the readings that we've seen and in the discussions, but I would say it engages the community in both an effective and ethical way. Through my internship contribution, I am going to be relaying the words of a very successful man in a very desirable field to a larger audience. And the people who read this are going to have a better understanding of how Daniel DeVise has gotten to be where he is, what he had to do as a journalist and as an author to have the success that he's had. I think that is certainly going to have a positive effect on the community of readers that the Faulkner Literary Society's journal has, and I'm proud to have been a part of it. The two readings I found most relevant to my internship experience were Campanella's article on gentrification and Batt's article on alternative forms of racial prejudice. The Campanella article was interesting to me because I realized that the Faulkner Society has, as one of its major goals, promoting the legacy of William Faulkner by promoting his residence. The Faulkner Literary Society is housed in Faulkner's former residence in the French Quarter, and that is part of its hook. That's part of what makes it so special. That's part of how it markets itself. And in doing so, it's done something to the French Quarter. It's made it more of a historical neighborhood, more of a marketed historical neighborhood. And as Campanello's article pointed out, that has contributed to gentrification in an adverse way. And while I think that building on William Faulkner's legacy is a great and noble goal, it also has adverse effects on the community, which I did not realize until I read the article. Now, as for the Bats article, I found it interesting because it talked about Western centrism in education, and this is something that the Faulkner Society has recently been trying to counteract. The Faulkner Society just received a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts to take part in the Big Read. And what this means is that we get to distribute the Big Read selection to schools throughout the New Orleans area. And this year's Big Read selection is called Sun, Stone, and Shadows. It's a collection of Mexican short stories, great short stories written particularly by women and from the Mexican literary tradition, which is something that not many American students have exposure to. And I think it's great that the Faulkner Society has gotten the chance to bring that into the public discussion. How has my internship impacted my academic and professional goals going forward? Well, the coolest thing I think about this internship is that it has given me the opportunity to write in a non-academic context, which is something that I haven't had to do before. It's something that's called on me to write in a completely different way, and I think that will strengthen my writing very much when I return to school in the fall. As for my professional goals, it actually has made me consider a career in journalism, particularly my internship contribution project. As I said, part of my internship contribution project was to research this author and journalist, Daniel Devise. And throughout that process, I had to read his articles, every article that he's done in the past 10 years for the Washington Post, for the Miami Herald, for the San Francisco Tribune. And it's a very different way of looking at journalism. Usually when I read the news, I read by what interests me. I've never read by an author that interests me, that I was forced to read. And charting one person's path throughout all these stories is very interesting. Daniel Devise has done everything from profiles on Tolkien scholars to infiltrating a neo-Nazi headquarters to get the inside scoop on their obsessed leader. And seeing it from the perspective of one person, going through all of these things, learning about all these things, and telling all these stories was something I didn't expect, and something that just seems so exciting and invigorating, and something I would love to pursue going forward in my own professional life. What constructive criticism would I give my internship supervisor? This is kind of a hard one because I've had a very, very positive experience at the Faulkner Society. I believe that they have a great program there, they have a great structure there, and they have a great team. I'm very lucky to have been a part of it, and it's challenged me in many ways. I feel like I've gotten so much out of my experience there. If I do have to offer constructive criticism, though, I would wish for more deadlines, harder deadlines. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I was given upwards of like 70, 80, 90 short stories that I had to read in a very vague time frame. And I think that we both would have benefited if I had been told, get 25 of these short stories done at this point, turn 25 in at this point, etc., until they were all done, instead of getting them all done in the next 3 weeks or so. Advice to anyone working at that site in the future is along the same lines. Budget your time yourself. If they're not going to do it for you, that doesn't mean you aren't responsible for it. Make sure that every week you're making progress on your contribution to the double dealer. Make sure that you stay on task. Make sure you use your time there wisely, because you actually have an extraordinary amount of responsibility for someone of your professional level at that institution, which is a great opportunity, and make sure you don't mess it up.